Ladies and gentlemen, let's begin the evening's program. As Dean of your school, it's my great privilege to preside this evening. Again, to reiterate my welcome to all of you for being here. Our great pleasure at having a chance to have this event in New York. You know, outside of the Bay Area, our largest concentration of GSB alums is in the New York area. So it's a wonderful chance for us every year. This is the 6th year, as I mentioned, that we have assembled to bring the Stanford Business School family together and also recognize a distinguished alumnus. I should have mentioned at the outset when I welcomed you to pay special attention to our wonderful sponsors who've helped us to bring this program together tonight. You've seen their tables, and it's just terrific to have their support and their friendship to make it possible. So please pay attention to the back of the program and thank those of them that are here this evening. The great thing about my job is I get to keep up with so many of you, and I meet alumni everywhere, and it's a marvel to me at just the diversity of things people do and how incredibly well they do them. You know, recently I was in London and I met with J.P. Garnier, who was the CEO, just retired, of GlaxoSmithKline, the world's large pharmaceutical company. And J.P. was telling me, as I often ask alumni, why did you come to Stanford? You know, how did that happen? And he was a PhD in pharmacology. He was in France. And he said, you know, it was so difficult to get to Stanford. I couldn't get a visa, and everybody told me why I shouldn't go there. You know, it was way at the end of the world. And I said, well, why did you come? He said, oh, I had to go, he said. I thought they were inventing the future out there. And you know, he was right. And we continue to do that today, to invent the future. I think that's one of the exciting things about Stanford and about our school. And I have to tell you, we really are about inventing the future right now in higher education and in management education. At the university itself, we are embarked on a very, very exciting, real renaissance in higher education of bringing all the schools together. You know, we're blessed at being a university in a close, contiguous campus that has a great business school, law school, medical school, education school, engineering school, all the arts and humanities, all the science and technology, all right in one close, contiguous campus where you can walk to each other's place of business and work. There are no excuses for not collaborating. There's no river in the way. There's no highway running through Stanford. You think about it, and we are perhaps the only university in the world that has that breadth of excellence in such an easily accessible place and an agreeable environment, not just the weather, which is great, but the cultural environment of a university that encourages entrepreneurship, experimentation, a relatively young university in the greater scheme of things. So what's happening is some very, very exciting initiatives. We are, of course, trying to fulfill our mission of educating leaders, but we're also trying to seek solutions to some of the world's really big challenges: the health of the planet, human health, the health of K through 12 education, just as a few examples. And by bringing all 7 Stanford schools together to focus attention on these, just yields insights that you wouldn't get if you left it to just one school to worry about a problem of that magnitude. So all over Stanford, and certainly with the business school right in the middle of it, you're seeing some amazing faculty and student collaborations that bring together specialists, the best in the world at what they do, to work on interesting problems and projects. And as a business school, we're both a contributor to this wonderful process that's going on, and I think we as a school bring a lot to it. We bring an expertise in what does it take for organizations to really perform and perform well. But also working on those problems brings a lot to us. It brings much greater meaning to our purpose as a school and why management is so important today and why it's so critical. So I have to tell you, it's an exciting time to be at Stanford and to be in the middle of all this with a school that's seen as a real leader on campus because of what we bring to the party. You know, we bring this incredible specialty, which is organizational performance. And at our school, we're involved in what I've told you before, the 3 C's. You know, a new curriculum, which is in place this year. We're going to do our 3rd quarter now coming up with a new curriculum. It's more personalized, more global, more about leadership and communication. New collaborations across Stanford with all these exciting courses and classes that engage graduate students working on common problems. And of course, to make it all happen, a new campus, which is a real big undertaking. If we can continue our tremendous momentum in support from alumni, we hope to break ground this summer on an amazing new physical space that will really enable our academic vision to come to life so that we can have the sort of spaces for teaching and learning that facilitate the kind of curriculum and collaborations that we've already specified as the heart of our academic vision. It'll be a leadership building and campus. It'll be LEED Platinum in terms of its environmental responsibility and sustainability. We'll be the only major business school in the world that combines all those features. So it's exciting, and I hope you get a sense of that tonight, that you're part of something pretty special. Those of us who work at Stanford feel really lucky to be involved at this moment in our history when we are playing this role and putting ourselves to this challenge. And I just thank all of you here for all the help you're giving us in that endeavor. Now, of course, our leadership as a school is really driven by the leadership of our people, our faculty who do great things, but in particular our alumni who go out in the world and do great things. And our purpose tonight is to honor a very distinguished member of our alumni community. This Excellence in Leadership Award is something we give often, not every year, but we have been giving it now for the last 6 or 8 years. There are about 7 recipients so far. And I think to do the introductory honors tonight, it's suitable and appropriate to invite last year's honoree to introduce tonight's honoree. Last year, in this very same wonderful venue, our honoree was a member of the great class of 1978. He came to Stanford after 6 years in the Navy, which he joined right after leaving Georgia Tech. He left Stanford to work a couple years at McKinsey, but then he started with others a firm 28 years ago yesterday called General Atlantic. 28 years ago yesterday was their birthday, first day, and he guided GA very successfully over those 28 years. He's a wonderful member of our Stanford community. He's a member and the recent past chair of our Business School Advisory Council. He's a member of the Board of Trustees. He's a member of the steering committee for this very path-breaking Stanford Challenge. He's a member of the advisory board of our exchange partner, the Tsinghua School of Economics and Management in Beijing. So it's a great privilege and pleasure for me to introduce and to ask you to welcome to the podium Steve Denning. Steve?
And I appreciate those kind remarks that Bob just spoke about me. But I think the thing that he failed to mention in describing what Stanford Business School has achieved over the past few years is, I can remember when the ratings came out and we weren't at the top, we tended to ignore those ratings. But last week, U.S. News and World Report, published the ratings, and they got it close. They had us tied with Harvard for number one. And I think it's a real tribute to the leadership that Bob has really exhibited over the past few years, 9 years to be exact, at Stanford. It's put us back in the place that frankly, we ought to be. But this evening's not about... But the evening's not about Bob tonight. It's certainly not about me, but it's about Michelle Clayman. And I have the privilege tonight to introduce our honoree, Michelle. She is the founder, the managing partner, and chief investment officer of New Amsterdam Partners, an institutional money management firm based right here in New York City. But before I describe Michelle's professional and personal accomplishments, let me very briefly summarize her background, most of which is in the program. She grew up in England, attended Oxford University, where she received a degree in philosophy, politics, and economics. And she also went on in 1979 to obtain her MBA from the Graduate School of Business. But after Michelle graduated from the GSB, she joined Salomon Brothers, where she spent 6.5 years building the Quantitative Equity Research Group. During this time, she observed that there was a substantive difference between the way that quantitative and traditional financial analysts viewed and assessed investments, and that by combining the best of both disciplines, one could derive a new investment approach and pursue a new investment strategy. Consequently, in 1986, she decided to start an investment firm that combined the best of quantitative and fundamental research, the name of which is New Amsterdam Partners. Michelle has led the firm for over 20 years, a period in which it has demonstrated an extraordinary record of sustained performance, one that is well respected by its competitors and well appreciated by its clients. Now, when I asked Michelle if there is any significance to the name she chose for her new firm, I received a very thoughtful reply that is indicative of the manner in which Michelle approaches these types of decisions. Quote, "We chose the name because it was redolent of old New York, and it suits us well because New Amsterdam was set up as an explicitly commercial and entrepreneurial settlement by the Dutch, as opposed to the theocratic ones of the English, and only she could say that. The Dutch tradition also brought to America many of the things we think of as quintessentially American: religious tolerance, diversity, and a Bill of Rights. And the tulip is a symbol of the dangers of speculative excesses, and it happens to be one of my favorite flowers. But as New Amsterdam's website explains, the tulip is a symbol of an important lesson derived from the craze of trading tulips in the early 1600s. Wise investment decisions grow out of a sound philosophy and an intellectually tested methodology and steadfast discipline, the hallmarks of the firm's investment approach and its commitment to its clients. Michelle has also shaped her business by being active in the investment industry. She sits on the board of the Society of Quantitative Analysts and the Institute for Quantitative Research in Finance, and has been involved since the mid-1980s with the Chartered Financial Analysts Institute, which was responsible for the CFA designations. Specifically, she has helped design the CFA exams, helped develop and write related textbooks and course materials, as well as independently published in the field of investment management. But beyond the investment management industry, Michelle's passion is a genuine interest in issues related to gender and women's equality. She approached the Institute for Gender Research at Stanford in 1993. She was impressed with the Institute's research breadth, its interdisciplinary programs, and long history of serving scholars working on gender and women's issues. She agreed to get involved with the Institute and shortly thereafter joined its National Advisory Panel. Subsequently, she supplemented her original gift to the Institute with a naming gift. And so in 2006, the Institute was renamed the Clayman Institute for Gender Research, and Michelle was asked to chair its advisory council, a position she continues to hold. Today, the Institute is part of Stanford's School of Humanities and Sciences and is the locus on campus for any research related to women and gender. Michelle has been and continues to be a leader in this critical area of our society, but she has also extended this leadership to the GSB. At her reunion a couple years ago, a number of women from Michelle's class discussed how their careers and social lives had unfolded and how to better prepare women GSB graduates to succeed in both their professional and personal lives. The result of these discussions was a comprehensive new effort in the GSB called the Women's Initiative Network, or better known around the campus as WIN. It focuses on 4 areas: admissions, curriculum development, student life, and lastly, life stage support post-graduation from the GSB. Let me give you just one example of the impact that this endeavor has had at the business school in the area of admissions. The first class in which WIN focused was the class of 2009, last year's class. Here, the percentage of women in the class is 38%, compared to the prior year, where it was 32%, and compared to the years in the late 1970s, when Michelle and I were at the business school, it was in the low 20s. WIN continues to work across all 4 of the areas, and Michelle continues to co-chair this initiative. But Michelle has also been an active volunteer here in the community in New York, providing services to the Bellevue Hospital, Children's Services, as a Girl Scout leader, and at the East Harlem Tutorial Program. She is also a member of the Dean's Council at the Harvard Divinity School, as well as a member of the Stanford Graduate School Advisory Council. But as you can see, Michelle is being honored here tonight, not only for her excellence in leadership in the financial industry, but also for her untiring leadership in the community, in particular for her work in gender equality. Please give Michelle Clayman a warm welcome as the recipient of the Stanford 2008 Excellence in Leadership Award.
Well, thank you, Steve, for those remarks. And, I had a speech, but you gave it. But it's wonderful to be honored tonight. It's somewhat overwhelming. Bob Joss mentioned the 3 C's that we talk about at the Stanford Business School, so curriculum, collaboration, campus. There are 3 B's of after-dinner speaking, and I'll try and stick to them, and they are be brief, be funny, and be seated. Basically, Steve gave you my life story, born and raised in England. But I just want to say it's really thanks to my mother in the U.S. that I got to be educated and I got to go to Stanford, and that was huge. And the way that happened was that during the Second World War, my mother was evacuated from the UK with her younger sister and came to live with her cousin Joe, who's sitting at this table. And as a result, because everyone in the US at the time was educated, my mother got to go to college, and that was really huge. And so she really insisted that my brother and I be educated. And, thank heavens, my mother gave me her cousin Joe because he and my Aunt Mimi have become my second set of parents. So thank you for being here. So we were talking about my parents. My dear old dad, by contrast, was a bona fide Cockney, born within the sound of Bow Bells, grew up in the East End of London, left school at 14, went to work because that's what boys like that did. Very skeptical about education. But my mom said, this is what we have to do. I went to a great girls' school. I went to Oxford. And at the time, and this was the mid-'70s, there was a lot of pressure on girls to go either into teaching or the civil service, and I really wasn't interested in either. So I was doing a lot of journalism on campus, but at the same time, England was going through this dire financial crisis, and I thought, I don't understand what this is all about. I'd love to understand it. So I got some great advice from a family friend who said, don't even bother to think about the British merchant banks. Even though you've got an Oxford education, they're only looking for men, Oxford and Cambridge graduates from the elite boarding schools. Go to an American bank because they won't care that you're a girl and they will train you very well. So I ended up at Bank of America as one of 2 bachelor's students in their MBA training program. And the other bachelor's student was a guy from Cambridge, and he was talking about going to business school. And I was like, I don't know. And well, I was young. What can I say? So 2 of the VPs that I worked for took me aside one day and said, you're a clever girl. You should really think of applying to business school, and we'll write your references. So I was like, oh, all right. And Bank of America at the time was a California institution, so as far as they were concerned, there was only one business school in the world. So I applied to Stanford last minute, got accepted, I was on a plane, and I experienced extreme culture shock. Because, at Oxford I'd been used to drinking sherry with my tutors. That's what they call faculty. I was used to going to formal dining hall, which meant wearing your academic gown to eat dinner. A very useful skill. And then I turn up at Stanford, and there's an orientation barbecue, and Laurie Lieberman, who was the Derek Bolton of back then, runs over in running gear. And it was like, this is very strange. But it was great. It was, absolutely wonderful. And I met 2 of the great loves of my life. I met computers and modern financial theory. And they, unlike some of my loves, have stayed with me. And even though we were being trained to go into large companies, there must have been something in the water at the time, because I realized that it was possible to conceive of a whole business that wasn't just a mom and pop business. And, the intellectual life was great. I mean, in finance, I loved Bill Sharp, Paul Kuttner, of course, Jim Van Horn. In accounting, Bill Beaver, George Foster, Steve Brandt, and then Pitch Johnson, who is here from California, who taught me new business. And but of course, there was another side to Stanford, so I learned to drink margaritas and to sit in hot tubs, and to go to toga parties. And there are photos of me dressed as Liza Minnelli. There are photos of me dressed as a giant architect. And there are other photos of which the less said, the better. And the late 70s was also the age of disco. It was the age of Saturday Night Fever. And my dear friend Linda Bialecki, who's sitting somewhere over there, and she and I met in dummy math, which is why I grew up to be a quantitative money manager. But she and I found a physics PhD student who was willing to come down to the GSB and teach disco. And one of my proudest accomplishment was figuring out a way of how to hack into the business school computer and send out notices of where each night we were going to go disco dancing. Even though I was intrigued with the thought of starting a business, I was going to graduate at 26, and I thought there was no way, shape, or form that I was ready to start a business. So I headed to Wall Street, went to Salomon Brothers, went through their infamous training program, and my first assignment was trading options for the firm account. And then in early 1980, they came to me and said, would I be willing to go in as the junior person in a quantitative equity research group? And one of my classmates from Stanford called me up and said, you must have done something terrible to be sent there. And I was like, no, I think it's going to be kind of interesting. And then, as Steve described, really it was my experience there, seeing the quant world, seeing the traditional world, that eventually gave me the idea for my business, because a lot of my job was talking to money managers around the US and in Europe about how to use quantitative methods to design investment processes. So at some point the light bulb went on, why am I showing other people how to do it? Why don't I try doing it myself? So 22 years ago, I was young, I was bold, I was foolish. I started a business. Thank heavens, 22 years later, I'm still here. Now, they say that behind every successful man is a successful woman. Behind me are 4 great guys who are here tonight, my business partners, Nat Paul, Chris Bowen, David Lubell, and Bill Lynch. And I couldn't do what I do without them. And I have to say they are patient and long-suffering, because I'm forever blathering on about Stanford to the point where their eyes roll back in their heads and they fall over in catatonic stupors. And they mock me for talking about us as higher life forms. And when we came in from cocktails, they were razzing me because they said there weren't a lot of halos in the room. But let me talk about what Stanford means to me and has meant to me. Firstly, it was really the exposure to the greats of modern finance that have led to my career. Secondly, I think there isn't a week that goes by where I don't use something that I learned from my MBA. Not necessarily the specific item, but the way to think about the task. And then thirdly, the Stanford way of friendliness and teamwork, I hope taught me that you can be a leader without being an ass. Recently I've had the privilege of being on the advisory council, and it's just been wonderful to learn from Bob how to lead a professional organization. And I've also learned a lot from Steve Denning, and really that's been about boldness of vision. And then, of course, as Steve talked about, I've been very involved with WIN, the Women's Initiative Network. And there are a lot of people in the room tonight who should be acknowledged for it. Firstly, Susan Harmon, and I'm dazzled by the light, but she's over there. She was the one who got all worked up, and she prodded Linda Bielecki, and Linda Bielecki prodded Donna Hall, and Donna Hall prodded me. And Sharon Marine then put me in touch with Mary Clark, who is my co-leader. And we couldn't do what we do without Erica Richter, who's our classmate who works for the GSB. And there are plenty of other people in the room. Lauren Levitan in from San Francisco, and her friend Rachel Sherl. Ann Cassells is here from California. Let's see, Laura Savarin is here, Fran Schulman, Carolyn Downey. there are 50 of us, and we range from people who graduated in the 60s to people who graduated in '07. Oh, and I almost forgot. Nicole, are you here? Nicole Sermier from '05. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun to be involved with WIN. I've been very involved with the admits and the current students. What it's done is it's made me feel as if I'm 25 again. It almost makes me want to put on that giant artichoke costume. But you're relieved to know that I won't dress up as Liza Minnelli because time has not been kind to either of us. So I'd like to thank Stanford and the GSB. Both have really enriched my life in so many ways, and I'd like to thank you for giving me this wonderful honor.
Well, Michelle, there really is an Excellence in Leadership Award, and I want to not only give this to you, but I want to say on behalf of all of us at the school, the entire community in New York and around the world, thank you for allowing us to honor you. Thank you for all you've done that makes this a suitable honor for you. And I think most of all, and I think those of you who've listened to Michelle, thank you for being who you are and the wonderful role model you are for all of us, for our students, for their futures. And our heartiest congratulations and thanks for being our 2008 Excellence in Leadership Award honoree, Michelle Clayman. Yeah, we talked.